let's start. Thank you so much,
Okay.
Tim, for joining our interview. That's a great pleasure. Thank you for taking the time. Maybe just to have a good start, you are the executive director of the River Wine Foundation. But please tell a little bit more about yourself and your position and the foundation.
Okay, great. Well, yeah, thanks for the opportunity to have a chat with you and hopefully share this with other people that are interested in what we're going to be talking about. The Riverwind Foundation, we actually established that in 1999. And the original purpose, of the Riverwind Foundation, which still continues to this day, is to provide programs that help to educate, train, and provide technical assistance to businesses primarily, but also to organizations on different policies and practices for sustainability. So we did a good number of workshops over the course of the early 2000s. And then in 2006, I became the director of the Jackson Hole Chamber of Commerce. And I believe one of the reasons why I was hired by their board of directors is to bring into the conversation the environmental and social responsibility opportunities and that we have here in Jackson Hole, in addition to our interest in economic health and job creation and so forth. So I helped the Jackson Hole Chamber of Commerce begin a conversation in the community about the triple bottom line. So I was in that position from 2006 to 2012. And then when I retired in 2012, one of the last projects that the Chamber of Commerce began was to apply for, and we were one of the 6 selected by the Global Sustainable Tourism Council in 2012 to adopt what was then the first set of destination criteria for sustainability. So we were one of the first 6 early adopters, and what we received from that project was, from the first time ever, a baseline from a third well-qualified party of how sustainable we were in the areas of environment, community, economy, and then destination management. And one of the key findings from that experience was that despite all the efforts that are going on in Jackson Hole in terms of environmental and conservation, in terms of community and cultural projects, as well as the economic vitality that Jackson Hole has really never been absent for decades now due to the growing tourism economy here. Despite all the efforts going on, there was not an organization or program that was working to unite all these efforts toward common community goals for sustainability and international standards for sustainability performance. And so that was the beginning of the Jackson Hole and Yellowstone Sustainable Destination Program that my organization has been the key management entity or coordinator of. And basically we implement projects that are destination management oriented and have been doing so since 2014. So for the last 7 years, we've been implementing specific projects to help with moving our destination toward what goals we have set for ourselves for sustainability, as well as increasingly meet international standards for sustainability at the destination level. And that was a milestone in our performance was the certification of us as a sustainable destination in March of 2020 by EarthCheck. So that was a milestone, as well as the National Geographic World Legacy Award finalists, as well as the World Travel and Tourism Council finalists award for destination management as well. So we've been meeting milestones along the way, and we have a lot more to do.
Really beautiful story and challenging beginnings, and it seems that you're putting things together. So since you have started, what have you seen has been changing in terms of stakeholders approach, but also customers in seeing sustainability or the demand for sustainable tourism?
Well, leading up to the pandemic, what we've seen in terms of the business community is becoming more receptive, interested, and actually more engaged in training that primarily my organization offers, my team and I offer, as well as pursuing certification and other forms of recognition for sustainable performance. Those are for our higher, more top performers in terms of sustainability. So the business community has become increasingly aware of and engaged in our sustainability and destination management program. So my team and I have worked with close to 400 different businesses here in Jackson Hole since 2014, providing training and technical assistance. And that work continues to this day through various programs that my organization is managing as
And
well.
what do you
So
think is so that they are more interested? What has changed?
Having someone actually approach businesses and explain how by becoming more environmentally and socially responsible, that becomes a more profitable business. So we have a good amount of data that we use and research that we've gathered or other entities have published that we use to support our rationale to businesses that they can become more profitable, either by saving money or attracting more customers, as well as attracting more loyal, not just customers, but also longer term staff. So we approach businesses from the business point of view. Having been the director of the Chamber of Commerce, I understand what that is. And by providing the economic, if you will, argument for sustainability, we've been able to engage a lot of businesses in becoming more environmentally and socially responsible.
So you say that you have a lot of data, that the businesses can be more profitable. Do you see also demand on the customer side? Because there's a lot of, beautiful research saying that there's demand for sustainable tourism, customers want it, but then there's a, reality comes in and it's not very clear whether it's the case in reality. So what's the case for in your destination?
Well, it's my experience and understanding from experience that visitors that come to Jackson Hole are primarily coming for other reasons, for wildlife, scenery, recreational opportunities, and so forth. But once they're here, then they start to get a bit of an experience or awareness that this is not just a destination that has national parks and national forests and other attractions and amenities, but also we have a coordinated approach, increasingly coordinated approach toward working together as a collection of different stakeholders to become more sustainable. And so I believe they don't necessarily come here because of our commitment to sustainability. They come here for other reasons, but once they're here, then they do become more aware. And so we feel that we have an opportunity as well as a responsibility to create this awareness in our visitors, with the hope that when they go back home, wherever home is around the world, that they may share their experience with Jackson Hole with their locally elected officials and other stakeholders in their community in general. So, but I will say that there is an increasing trend here where individual businesses are receiving customers or guests that are staying at their hotel or going on their tours because they have information on their website and other promotional media that's talking about their sustainability practices. So I know for a fact that we have businesses that are attracting business and profitability because of their sustainability practices. So I think at the individual business level, there is some attraction to by visitors as well as people who live here to use, patronize their business because of their expressed environmental and social responsibility.
Mm-hmm. So this is probably the pre-pandemic picture. So what happened during COVID? Probably it was a roller coaster for you. So what's been going on there? How's the situation right now? What are the learnings through this?
Yeah, well, the trend that I just explained is actually continuing through the pandemic. That actually has not changed. In the United States, we have a large domestic travel market. And that travel market has, if you will, just blown up in terms of the amount of people, amount of Americans that decide they're not going to be traveling internationally during the pandemic, or they just couldn't. And so they decided if they're going to travel, they're going to travel with the United States. And so last year, at this time in June, we had below normal visitation. And then in July of 2020, we had about the same amount of visitation that we had in 2019. And then in August, September, and October, we broke visitation records. More and more people, as they felt more and more comfortable to travel, or more and more confined where they live and wanted to escape to wide open spaces, came here. So we had record-breaking visitation August, September, and October last year. And then this year, we're expecting all of our records for visitation to fall, to break with increased visitation. Now that sounds wonderful, doesn't it? That especially with the vaccination.
I already sense the challenges.
Yeah, so that sounds wonderful, and it's great from an economic perspective. However, we're still in a pandemic situation, even though that is easing in some countries like ours. And we have primarily from Europe, workers that come just for the summer season, our peak season. And that's historically been the case. And we've been relying increasingly on young European workers, including from Russia, to come to the United States and work. And Jackson Hole is one of the places that we get that these workers come to. Well, what's happened because of the pandemic, that these workers have not been able to travel. And last year was very, very difficult, where we had record-breaking visitation, but we had businesses that did not have enough staffing, enough employees to support the business's operations with all these visitors. And we're expecting this to be the same situation again this year, perhaps even worse in terms of the amount of visitors coming, but a shortfall in the amount of people who are working for businesses. And so we're going to have businesses that are going to be increasingly stressed as the summer season goes on, in being able to provide the level of service that they're used to providing and visitors expect. So we have a big challenge with all that. And of course, we're concerned that now that our coronavirus positive test cases are approaching zero right now here in our county, in Teton County, which is also known as Jackson Hole. We're concerned that our positive test cases are going to greatly increase as the visitation does as well. Everyone's expecting that. And so our public health services are, I believe now are prepared, whereas last year they were coming up to speed with how to handle the situation. So we do have some challenges with us this year, and it's not just the number of visitors, but also the type of visitors. More and more visitors are coming here who maybe for the first time, not just to Jackson Hole, to Grand Teton National Park, Yellowstone National Park, but maybe for the first time in a place such as this that does have a very strong environmental stewardship ethic. But these visitors are not educated and don't know how to be behaving in a safe and appropriate way around wildlife. And so there's more and more wildlife conflicts, or just inappropriate behavior, not just with wildlife, but on our public lands that we want to keep intact and preserved. So we have some challenges with visitors coming in, not only in great numbers, but in great numbers of visitors that just don't have the level of awareness and education on how to behave in an environmentally and socially responsible way. And so therein lies a challenge and an opportunity for organizations such as mine to reach out to visitors and provide that level of education and awareness on how to behave in a very wild environment here in Jackson Hole.
So I would like to go deeper to, ask a little bit more in details, explore the marketing and communications. The first part would be attracting the customers. So now it sounds, some destinations are suffering because no one can come, and they've been depending on they've been dependent on international travelers. And then some countries like in Russia as well are suffering from over tourism from the domestic travelers. So first of all, what is the destination's marketing strategy? Are there any limits? Are there any goals in terms of who to market to? Is there any limit of how many people can you accept?
That's a very good question. So to answer your second question, we don't have limitations on the number of people that come here. We do have limitations on the number of people who can stay overnight because of the amount of accommodations that we have, which is quite extensive, over 7,000 beds. And we do have campgrounds that are on a reservation basis, but essentially we do have a cap on the number of people who can stay here overnight just because of our accommodations. But the number of people that come and visit during the day, there's no limitations to that at the moment anyway. And I can talk about this a little bit later in our conversation. We're at the very beginning of the process of creating a destination management plan that works together with our destination marketing. And our destination marketing up to now has been done primarily by the Jackson Hole Travel and Tourism Board. It's a board of volunteers that are appointed by our locally elected officials to develop marketing strategies and campaigns that hopefully are in alignment with the values that our community has. And our community has very strong environmental values as well as social responsibility values. We have over 200 nonprofits in our little community that are focused on environmental and conservation and health and human services and other social missions, if you will. So our marketing at the destination level has been primarily one of creating a high level campaign in terms of the messaging, with the hopes that individual businesses that are also doing marketing, at least for themselves, as well as possibly for the entire destination, are going to coordinate the messaging that they send out with the messaging that our Travel and Tourism Board has provided. And with different degrees of success. Some businesses readily adopt and work with our Travel and Tourism Board's destination marketing campaigns. Others just do theirs on their own. So we do have room for improvement in how we unite as a collection of stakeholders, not just businesses, but also our nonprofit organizations who are providing some of the messaging for how to behave responsibly in an environment that is very wild compared to most places in the world in terms of wildlife and just unpeopled land. So we do have room for improvement, and it's mainly in the area, not of devising strategies on trying to reach the responsible traveler, but about how do we bring together all of our various stakeholders, of which there are many, many, to work together with a common high-level messaging, and then individual businesses can tailor that messaging for their own purposes. So that's where we are now in needing to strengthen our coordination and then have that work with our destination management policies and practices, which are at the very early stage of developing.
So with the specifically right now, is there any messaging, or are you letting people know that it's going to be crowded in here and we don't have enough staff? Is there any message going like this, or you're still trying to attract more customers?
I would say at the destination level, we are no longer working to attract more visitors. Of course, there are individual businesses that want, like lodging properties, that do want to get close to or at 100% occupancy rate. They'll continue to try to attract more people. Same with tour operators and other kinds of businesses. But at the destination level, the marketing, the outgoing messaging has changed from attracting more people to encouraging and influencing people when they come here to behave more responsibly. The Keep Jackson Hole Wild campaign that the Travel and Tourism Board has been running for a few years, as well as responsibly tagging, hashtagging, as well as reaching out to what we hope is the responsible traveler. So we hope that by saying this is who we are and what our expectations are for ourselves, and as well as for our visitors when they're here, hopefully we're going to attract people who say, I want to go to Jackson Hole because it's a place where they are wanting to attract responsible environmental stewards, socially responsible people, not just anybody. But, given the trend in the last 14, 15 months with the pandemic, we're attracting everybody of all sorts of levels of environmental responsibility, of social responsibility as well.
So what are your plans, like how you want to educate the traveler, or maybe there are some instruments that you've already proved to be successful, or some ideas that you're planning to implement?
Well, you can only determine success by having indicators that you collect data and measure on. And we're still in the early stage of developing those indicators. And that is part of our project that we are starting now, actually beginning next month in earnest, to develop a destination management plan that'll have those indicators to measure not just impacts of visitors, but also how well we're attracting the type of visitor that hopefully any destination would want, which is visitors that really believe that when they come to a place, they have a responsibility. In our case, responsibility to keep our wildlife safe. How's that?
Can you give maybe some, for the audience, some examples of the indicators that could be used? Not necessarily that you already confirmed. I know you're just starting, but what the indicators would be?
Yeah. Well, I think what I suggest for any destination, including for ourselves, is that you have a continual process of surveying your visitors. So getting feedback from visitors from their experience here, as well as perhaps after they've left here, surveying them. But the kind of surveys that we would like to get feedback on, or the kind of feedback we'd like to get from our visitors, is not just on their experience here, but also on ideas on how we could further improve their experience by implementing policy and practices, programs, education in nature that can help them better understand the environment that they're in when they're visiting here, which again is a very relatively pristine environment when it comes to wildlife and natural resources. So I think really key for any destination and for us is to have not just a one-time visitor survey, but a regular visitor survey. And in our case, we have seasons. We have a winter season, which attracts a different kind of visitor than our summer season, as well as our fall and winter and spring season. So in the ideal sense for us, we ideally have 4 different visitor surveys, one for each of the 4 seasons, so we can better understand our visitor, not only in terms of what they're interested in, but opportunities for us to help educate them and attract more and more the responsible traveler.
The right customer. This sounds exciting, and I think now destinations are realizing that the marketing plays a huge part, and communications plays a huge part in reaching the sustainability objectives that they have, because until now the sustainable tourism strategy and the marketing department were usually quite separate. So that's interesting to see how the destination is gonna implement this in practice. The last question about the COVID. Do you think that the post-COVID world will be more sustainable, or will it be easier for business to be sustainable, or the opposite now, that people just want to get their income back?
Yeah, I think you're going to see all those cases. And I think that destinations such as ourselves, where we, if you will, don't need to attract more visitors, we just need to manage the visitors that we're attracting and hopefully influencing them. I think at destinations such as ourselves, we are at the stage where we can, if you will, afford to look at evolving from where we've been to where we want to go. And where we want to go is to integrate management and marketing together. They should be mutually supportive. And the term used in a lot of the industry is a DMO, which for most people means a destination marketing organization. And the Travel and Tourism Board that we have here has been our destination marketing organization. That organization now and our community is evolving to having a DMMO, a destination management and marketing organization, where management and marketing work together to be mutually supportive rather than competing. So that is our opportunity for our own tourism industry economy to evolve, is into from a tourism-based economy to a sustainable tourism-based economy. Now, obviously, there's other destinations that the pandemic has caused such restrictions where visitors just stopped coming, maybe because they're smaller countries, smaller destinations, where they don't have a huge domestic travel market, such as the United States or Russia.
Yeah.
So I think
Russia is the one that has a huge, it has a huge domestic market. Yeah.
And China as well, of course.
Yeah.
So I think there's a spectrum, and we're perhaps in one end of the spectrum where we're ready to take evolutionary steps forward, to leap forward into more of a management practice and situation with our destination, with our national parks, our national forests, our wildlife refuges, as well as private land as well. Whereas at the other end of the spectrum, we have destinations that they're starving, they're hurting so badly in terms of their economy, and then or their social structures, and perhaps their environmental programs that are working to protect wildlife, that are now no longer receiving tourism funding to protect the wildlife. So in those cases, as we could probably readily understand, they need money, and so they need visitors, and maybe it's a secondary concern what kind of visitors that they want to attract. They just need people to come.
So thank you so much. That these were the questions about the COVID part. And now I would like to ask you a little bit more on the sustainable destination management, about the sustainable destination management, and what are you decided to go for the certification, and first, why is that? Why have you felt that going for third-party certification is needed and would help you in anything?
Right, and well, when we started the Jackson Hole and Yellowstone Sustainable Destination Program in 2014, we had a number of goals that we wanted to strive toward, and one of them was to actually get certified as a sustainable destination. Although that's an interesting term, because there's very few destinations in the world that possibly ever could actually be technically sustainable, but we all can become more sustainable, correct? So we set ourselves a goal of doing that, and our main motivation for wanting to go for certification within 5 years, which actually is when we started with the process with EarthCheck, was to really drive improvement, to drive innovation here, to become more united in our sustainability efforts, so that we weren't so individual in nature, but more collective. And so that was our primary motivation. Of course, there are other benefits of being certified. For the destination marketing people, it's to be able to market Jackson Hole and be able to say that Jackson Hole has been certified by this company to be at this level of sustainability performance. So, there's different parties or entities within Jackson Hole that saw different opportunities for using certification. And for us with the Riverwind Foundation, it was really to create a greater awareness and more partnerships and collaboration to work together to be strengthening our destination management practices. And we did that on a project by project basis. And that helped build us toward becoming more and more sustainable in our collective practices, as well as getting more individual stakeholders to be working toward more greater levels of sustainability, environmentally and socially, as well as economically.
So it's been a long journey for you, and you are quite advanced. So what would be your advice for those destinations that are only, starting, and because right now, as I told you before, I'm working in Central Asia, for example, and
yes,
there are many projects, and all the projects talk about green economy, circular economy, and destinations start realizing, and the tourism industry starts realizing that, okay, this is the direction we should go to, but they don't know where to start, what to do. So What would
Yeah.
be your advice for destination managers who are at the beginning of their sustainability journey?
Well, you've heard the saying, know thyself. And so I think the first step for any destination of any size in any culture is to understand where they are relative to sustainability standards. And so I think it's important to pick a sustainability standard. The Global Sustainable Tourism Council, of course, has their destination criteria and standard for sustainability. That's a good place to start. And then there's, of course, bodies that the GSTC has recognized or even accredited based on their sustainability certification programs. So I think the first step is to create a baseline of performance and take a sustainability standard and do an assessment, either a self-assessment or get an outside party who's experienced in doing assessments to come in and help that destination and their stakeholders assess themselves. So I think it's important to understand as a destination where you are relative to a sustainability standard. And then the next step in the process is say, where do we want to go? Who are we? Who do we want to be as a destination? In the case of Jackson Hole, we're a community that our economy is based on travel and tourism. So we're both a community and a destination. So we and other destinations think about what is their vision for who they want to be moving forward into the future, and what goals and milestones do the stakeholders and the public that make up the destination want to set for themselves, and then create a plan from going from where they are to where they want to go, from A to B. And that plan ideally has a vision, it has goals, has strategies on how do we go from A to B, and then specific actions and projects to help them go from A to B. And then very importantly is you can't manage what you don't measure. So it's very important that they have key performance indicators to measure their progress toward these goals and how successful these strategies are being and actions are being implemented. In other words, create a destination management plan. So I think it's very important that any destination at any level of maturity has such a plan once they've established where they are and where they want to go.
I absolutely agree. But that's the very complex approach for the destinations. And a person, let's say there is a person who thinks, yes, we need to do this, but I'm just alone sitting here and I need to convince my boss, I need to convince this organization, that organization, how to bring people on board on this.
Yes, yeah. And thankfully, there are destinations that have some experience and lessons learned that they can share with the rest of the world, with other destinations that perhaps are just starting to think about embarking on this journey of sustainability. And we do have experience here, and whether it's myself or others have presented in different conferences and forums, virtually a lot lately, on what our experience has been, what lessons we've learned, and recommendations that we have for destinations on how to engage with stakeholders. With my organization, we've been very, very focused on stakeholder engagement. As I mentioned earlier, we've worked with over 400 businesses, either in group training environments or on one-on-one technical assistance. We have different educational tools that we use to bring the level of awareness and level of, if you will, literacy about what sustainability is and sustainable tourism is, that we use to help educate, anywhere from report cards that we report on our own individual progress, to codes of conduct, to pledges, to publications where we focus on specific sustainability issues and opportunities and programs that, of course, are always related to tourism here, since everything's related to tourism here, one way or another. So it's important that there's this strong education and outreach program to the stakeholders here. And one of the groups of stakeholders, of course, is our visitors. So it's important that we work with our businesses and stakeholders here to be able to reach out to and educate our visitors, so we have a more responsible less impactful, hopefully, visiting public, which are, of course, 4 to 5 million a year.
The straightforward question is, who pays for the education, especially in the beginning when the businesses don't see the added value?
So I think that depends on who's doing the educating, on who's paying for it. So in the case of our Jackson Hole Travel and Tourism Board, our visitors actually pay for that. So we have a lodging tax, what other people call a bed tax, at 2%. That's added on to the average daily rate, our accommodations. For anyone who's staying less than 30 days here, will pay this lodging tax. That money, 98-point-something% of that money comes back from the state of Wyoming, where the lodging tax goes to, gets returned to us for our town and county to spend. In our case, 60% of those funds can be used for tourism promotion and visitor education, and then destination management. And then the other 40% goes primarily to funding services that are impacted by visitors, whether it's our transportation, our pathways, our public restrooms, other kinds of programs that are actually enjoyed by our residents as well as visitors. So in that, roughly on an annual basis, that 60% that goes toward marketing, promotions, and visitor education, destination management comes to around $6 million a year. And so we have a fairly healthy budget that we can use to, if you will, reach out to our visitors even before they come here, as well as while they're here, to help educate them. And again, that comes down to our marketing being very focused, not necessarily on bringing more people here, but attracting people who want to come to a destination that has a certain level of ethics when it comes to environmental stewardship and social responsibility, as well as, more than likely, when people are here, then hopefully reaching them and hopefully having an impact and influence on their behavior, as well as at least on their awareness of, in our case, how to behave around grizzly bears. You can't walk up right to a grizzly bear and to take a selfie. That's not a good idea.
Very interesting. Do you have any codes of conduct for tourists that you could share with other destinations that have similar environmental surroundings that maybe are also working on a code of conduct?
Absolutely, absolutely. And when we received the finalist awards from National Geographic and from the World Travel and Tourism Council, one of the reasons, I believe, among several or many, that I think got us to the point of getting that kind of recognition was our code of conduct that we've distributed to, I don't know how many visitors now, certainly over 100,000 visitors have seen our code of conduct since we created it. And we created it with the involvement of over 230 students, children here in our public schools, that we engaged to create this code of conduct that visually is very attractive, as well as the specific wording. So we involved the schools here very much, our next generation, if you will, of green leaders we involved in creating this code of conduct.
Wow, this is a beautiful story. And how are you distributing the code of conduct?
It's been up to now primarily through our visitor guide. So our local Chamber of Commerce, my former employer, has that in their magazine in the past. We've also provided it to organizations that have conferences here. So it's in the welcome packets. And we're about to embark on a new campaign where we're creating poster size versions of a code of conduct that will be located in businesses that want to sponsor that visitor outreach and education. But it's not just visitors that the code of conduct we hope will influence, but also our residents here as well.
Amazing. This is very cool. Thank you so much. I have just a very last question. For people, young people who want to build their career in sustainable tourism, what do you do in a day? Like, how does your day look like, in like some duties of yours?
Well, so for a young person, I don't know if my experience will readily be applicable.
Yeah, but there might be a person who's sitting right now and thinking, oh, I want to be like Tim someday.
No,
So
don't do
do
that.
they
Don't do
want
that.
to,
Yes.
what are the, what do you do? Like, how does your life look like? Because the sustainability management is very vague and people don't
Mm,
really understand. They see the theories, but they don't know what it means in practice in a daily life. So what's your job about?
yes. So, do you know what a border collie is? That kind of dog? It's a dog that herds sheep,
Ah,
or
right. Yes.
primarily sheep. But I suppose if I were an animal, I'd be a border collie. So I spend most of my time herding people together and creating opportunities for stakeholders to partner, to collaborate. Um, we don't have enough entities in the world or people who are focused not just on being experts in, say, energy sustainability or waste management and recycling or food sustainability or alternative fuels and transportation and so on. We need people to serve in those specific expertise roles. But we also need people who can take a step back and look at the big picture and see where, by creating opportunities for collaboration, it's a more efficient way to go about managing the destination and managing visitors, to working toward greater levels of sustainability. And so what I'd encourage young people is to, yes, become experts in specific areas of sustainability, but don't forget to look at the big picture and how you can develop the skills for, if you will, program management, to where you're creating these partnerships and these collaborations, because you can have a destination like Jackson Hole, and there's plenty of other destinations like this. They're doing really good work with individual stakeholders. But what is going on at the destination level to bring them all together, to work together toward common goals, toward a common vision, toward international standards for sustainability? We need people who are willing to work in that area. And it is a very fulfilling and satisfying to see people come together and work together. So I would encourage young people to, yes, become experts in specific areas of sustainability, but don't forget to develop the skills, the social skills, in a way, on how to bring people together, how to inspire them, to develop your leadership skills, to create these collaborations and these partnerships that are very difficult at times because of political reasons, because of ego reasons. People want to create their own turf and territory where they don't want anyone else to go into, and they forget that they can become more prosperous and fulfill their missions by actually working together rather than competing. So we need people who really see that the opportunity is to go from competition to collaboration. So that's sort of would be my plea, as well as encouragement for young people, is to develop those program management and social skills, as well as their specific technical expertise.
Thank you so much. It was lovely speaking to you. You have so much knowledge, and I could chat with you. Like when I come, we are just gonna sit and discuss for many hours, I guess. So thank you so much, Theo, for taking the time.
You're very welcome, Anula, and it's very nice to meet you. And thank you so much for the opportunity to share just a little bit about what we have going on here in Jackson Hole in terms of sustainability and in destination management. We have much more going on, and will have much more going on in the next year to 2 years for sure.
Very exciting. Thank you so much. Good luck with all the goals.
Thank you. Thank you.